Welcome back to my channel. Glad you could join me this morning. Now, a couple of months ago I did a video at home on rainy day photography, and we photographed succulents, and I showed you how to have some fun just photographing stuff around your house when you can't get outside. We're the end of November and I've got these beautiful Agapanthus in bloom in my garden in big pots, and I thought I'd show you how you can have some fun just photographing flowers around your house but not keeping them in that color. We'll take a couple of photos, and one of them I'll edit in their beautiful colors, but also I want to show you in Adobe Lightroom. And for me, photography is all about having fun. So sometimes when I get bored, you get stuck in a rut saying like, oh, am I losing my mojo of taking photos? Well, step outside the mold, find something different, edit a photo totally different. And this is what we're going to do this morning. We're going to photograph these beautiful Agapanthus. We're photographing in their natural color, but when we're going to go in the Lightroom, I'll edit one in its normal colors, and then we're going to have some fun and manipulate the colors, take it totally different from what it is now, to show you that you can have some fun and you can use your creative ability to come up with a unique photo. Now this morning I'm using my Nikon D500, and you can use any camera that you have. It doesn't have to be a Nikon D500. If I still had my Nikon D90, I would use the Nikon D90. And I'm using the Nikon 70-300 AF-P lens. Now this is a great lens. People think like, oh okay, if I want background blur, I really need an f2.8 lens or an f4 lens. You don't. You just have to realize that how to get the blur in your image takes a bit of time, but this is what I'm going to show you this morning, that even at f6.3 we can get some background blur to highlight our Agapanthus flower. I'm around 4 meters away from the Agapanthus flower. Why? Because this is the minimum distance that I have to be to get the Agapanthus flower where I want it framed in the photo. Because when I go to edit this photo, I want a little bit around the photo, top and bottom and on the sides, so I could put like a radial filter, darken the edges and really highlight this flower. So I've had to be at this distance. Also, I've angled this pot, I've moved this pot around so that I've got the longest distance between the flower and my fence. And I'm going to show you what it looks like at f6.3, at f8, at f11, and at f16. Now I can't go below f6.3 because that's the minimum aperture I can use at 300 mils, but I'm still going to get some great background blur. I'm shooting in aperture priority. I've set my white balance to sunny. Today I'm using aperture priority, and I haven't set my ISO to 100. I'd like to, but it's very overcast and it's drizzling every now and then. There's not much light, and I want to keep my shutter speed to a certain level so that I don't get blur, because there's a bit of breeze around, so I don't get blur when the flower moves around. So I've set the ISO to 320, and at f6.3 it's telling me my shutter speed is 1/160th of a second. So let's take a photo. Now I'm on a 2-second timer delay. Look at this, bang on. It's quite blurry in the background, and this is what I want. This will look great in Lightroom. Let's quickly now go to f8, then f11, then f16, and I'll show you what I mean. We're at f6.3, we'll go to f8, take another photo. Now we'll go to f11. That's right. Now we'll go to f16. So now let's quickly look at our photos and I'll show you the difference. So this is at f6.3. This is at f8. This is at f11. This is f16. And f16, can you see? You can see all the palings. Have I got like separation? No. The palings now, the fence is very distracting. But if I come back down to f6.3, this is so nice. And just like the horizontal blurs is going to look great in this photo. This is all the photos I need. Let's go into my home office, fire up Adobe Lightroom Classic, and I'll show you how to edit these photos. Now I've loaded the Agapanthus image into Adobe Lightroom, and you can see here, it looks really good, just straight out of the camera in RAW, but there's so much more that we can do with this image. The first thing here is we look at our color profile. It's set to camera landscape, which is what my Nikon D500 is set to, but I find that I don't like the camera landscape for this image, so I'll click on Adobe Color. Because if you look now, can you see that the background is more muted? It's flatter, and that's what I want. We don't have to touch the exposure. We can see here, the exposure is quite all right. We can just cool the image down just that little bit. There. We have blacks, whites, shadows and highlights. I'm just going to bring the highlights down a little bit like that. I'll bring the whites down a bit too. And the blacks I'll the blacks I will decrease just a little bit as well. Now the reason that I'm reducing the highlights and the whites is that I want to get as much detail as possible in these flowers here. See, the flowers are all open here on this side here, and it's like a very whitish blue color. I want to see some detail in there, so this is why I've reduced the highlights and the whites to make this area pop a little bit more. We're going to increase the texture a little bit and the clarity, but not too much, because remember, when we're using these sliders, we're affecting the whole image. And what we're going to do is we're going to split our editing in half. We're going to work on the flower, and then we're going to work on our background. So I like this already. I'm just going to give the image a little bit more vibrance. That looks really good. Now before I keep editing, what I'm going to do is I'm going to crop the image. I don't want to keep the image as a 6x4. I want it as an 8x10. I feel it's going to look much nicer because I want to try to keep it symmetric. So we come up here to crop, and I'm going to select 8x10. That looks much nicer, and all I'm going to do is make it even. Click done. Now this looks much better. You can see the left, the right, the top, the bottom are all about the same. The flower is very symmetrical, so I want to keep my cropping symmetrical as well. Now what we're going to come up here is to this little wheel up here. See the masking wheel? Recently Adobe Lightroom updated, so now we have masking tools. They're like layers in Photoshop. They're not physical layers, but we could treat them like a layer. So I'm going to come up here and say select subject, and this is going to select our flower. Beautiful. Look at that. It's selected all our flower and most of the stem, but it's just missing just a little bit here. So we'll come up here, we'll click add, I'll click on the brush tool, and I'm just going to paint a little bit there. That's it. Looks really nice. But what I can see here, where I'm circling here, it's actually selected a little bit of the background. I don't want that, so I'm going to select brush, erase, and remove that. We say subtract, click on the brush here, and I'm just going to remove it. Now you can see also, I should have mentioned that I'm on auto mask here, so it's very selective that just where I point, it's going to select it like that. Beautiful. Looks really nice. There's a little bit up the top here. Now I'm not going to take too much time. I know there's a couple little spots that I've missed. You could take a lot longer, but for the sake of this video, I'm going to show you how it would look like. Okay, I'm happy with this. Now you can see that there's an overlay on there. It shows all in pink. I don't have to come up here and say untick the show overlay. As soon as I touch one of these sliders here, the mask overlay, the color is going to disappear. So I'm just going to reduce the color down a little bit, just make it a little bit more bluer. Now remember this first image here, we're going to keep it fairly lifelike, so I'm not going to do too much editing. I'm just going to increase the texture a little bit, the clarity, a little bit of dehaze. That looks really nice. Now what I want to do is just affect the background. So we come back up here to create new mask. I'll click on select subject again. There, it's selected the subject. What we're going to do now, because we want the background, we're going to invert this mask. So we come up here to subject, click on it and say invert. Now look at that, see? It's flipped it around. But look, can you see we've got a couple of these flower buds here that show pink. We don't want that. So we go back, subtract, click on the brush tool, and we're just going to remove these very quickly. Now I can see the stem has also got a bit of pink, so I've got to make sure that I remove that, because if I don't, what I touch the background on will also be touching this. Beautiful. This looks really nice. Now what we're going to do is we're going to reduce the exposure. We're going to darken the background a little bit. So we grab the exposure here and we just reduce it down a little bit, like so. And we're going to come down to saturation and we're going to reduce the saturation a little bit. Beautiful. Look at that. Just a couple of minutes and we have a very impactful image. Remember, because it was raining and all that, we can darken the background just to make it pop. And this is where, even at f6.3, it's quite muted in the background. So this looks really nice. And remember, I stated that I'd angled the pot so I had as much distance as possible between the flower and my fence to give me that separation. And I don't have to do any more with that. This will look great on social media. This looks like an Agapanthus flower. But today is all about creating something unique. So let's get cracking. So this looks really nice, but remember I said I was going to edit one to look lifelike, plus we were going to add some artistic flair to it, so I don't have to start from scratch again. What I'm going to do is come down to the thumbnail here, click on it, and click on Create Virtual Copy. Now, a virtual copy in Adobe Lightroom is like a thumbnail. It doesn't exist in the real world, so you can't look on your computer and find it there. It's just there, but you can save it, and as soon as you save this image, well, not save it, you export it out of Adobe Lightroom, it will become a real image. So now we've already got our lifelike image. Let's have some fun and create something with a bit of drama, totally different from this bluey color. The first thing I want to do is, I'm on the background here, and what I'm going to do is really reduce the background. I want it near black. Now, the reason that I darken the background is because I want it to have impact, and I want people to look at it and to comment saying, I've never seen this variety of Agapanthus flower. What is it? Is it a new hybrid? It'll get people talking about your photo. The background's good now. Let's click on our first mask, which is the color here, and we're going to change the colors up a little bit. We're going to increase this way as well. There. That looks much better. Keep going a little bit more. Now I'm halfway there, so I'm liking this already, but now I want to add another mask, and this is a color mask. So I come over here, create new mask, and I click on color range. Now I'm going to, before I touch the flowers, I'm going to click on the inside here. I click on the green here, and now what I'm going to do, see, I'll actually have to take the show overlay off. What I'm going to do is change the colors here. I want it to get like an orangey color. Look at that. I can see there's a bit of green there, so I'm just going to click on the greens as well. I'll click add brush, and all I'm going to do is just paint on these so it all becomes orange. I want the same color. There, that's what I wanted. Now I'm going to click done. Now I'm going to come up here to the HSL for the saturation. I'll click on this little button here, and here now I'm just going to have a play with the colors. I really want to saturate this. I want it totally different. And I'll come up to the luminance here, do the same thing. There. See, if I increase the luminance, it's making it bright, but watch what happens when I decrease it. This is what I want. I'll come back to saturation with my tool again, and I'm going to work on the inside. I'm happy with that. Now we're going to jump back across to the luminance again, and I'm just going to use the orange slider here, and watch what happens to the flower. That looks so cool and so different. This looks a very striking image. We click done here. Now let's look at the two different photos. We come up here to YY, and look at that. This is the first photo that we've edited. Looks very natural, but look at our second one. Can you see how much impact this has? Looks just so good. So as you can see, we've got two very totally different images. The one on the left, normally edited to show just the real colors of the Agapanthus flower, and then the one to the right where we've added some creative style. So if you found value in this video, give me a big thumbs up. I'd appreciate if you subscribe to my YouTube channel. It really helps me out. Stay safe, enjoy your photography, no matter what photography you do, and I'll see you next time.